They laughed when Lyra walked through the village. They called her the lonely Omega, a wolf with no family, no rank, no awakened wolf, and no one willing to stand beside her. But one freezing night, Lyra did something no one else in the pack was brave enough to do. She stepped between a terrified child and a ruthless slave trader. She knew the law could punish her. She knew the pack would mock her. She didn't care. What she didn't know was that, deep in the snowy forest, a wounded black wolf was watching. A wolf carrying the royal crest around his neck. A wolf whose golden eyes belonged to a man the entire kingdom believed was dead. And when Lyra opened her cottage door and brought that mysterious wolf inside, the fate of the entire pack changed. Because weeks later, the same wolves who had laughed at her came walking through the snow. One by one. Silently. And then, every wolf in the pack dropped to their knees before her door. But they weren't kneeling because she had become their queen. They were kneeling because they had finally discovered who the lonely Omega really was. And why their missing Alpha King had chosen her. Winter had a way of making Frostfang Pack look beautiful from a distance. The mountains were white beneath the pale morning sky. Snow covered the rooftops, the pine trees, and the narrow paths that twisted between the pack houses. Smoke rose from chimneys in thin grey lines, disappearing into the cold. But beauty did not make the winter warm. Not for Lyra. She walked through the village carrying a small basket against her chest, her boots sinking into fresh snow with every step. Her brown cloak was old and patched at the sleeves. A few strands of dark hair had escaped from beneath her hood, and the wind kept pushing them across her face. She did not bother fixing them. She had learned long ago that there were some things in life not worth fighting. Like the cold. Like hunger. Like loneliness. And especially the opinions of other wolves. There goes the ghost. Someone laughed behind her. Lyra kept walking. Careful, another voice called. Don't get too close. Maybe loneliness is contagious. More laughter followed. She lowered her eyes. Not because she was ashamed. Because looking at them only made it hurt more. Lyra had been an Omega for 23 winters. Her wolf had never awakened properly. She had no powerful family behind her, no mate, no rank, and no one willing to speak for her. In Frostfang, that made her invisible. Or worse. It made her an easy target. She stopped at the market stall and counted the few coins in her palm. 2 roots, she whispered. And half a loaf. The old merchant looked at her basket. That's all. Lyra nodded. You're going to freeze. I'll manage. The merchant sighed and pushed an extra piece of bread toward her. Take it. Lyra looked surprised. I can't pay for that. I didn't ask you to. For a second, she almost smiled. Thank you. She turned away. Then she heard shouting. Not the usual teasing. This was different. Angry. Desperate. Lyra looked toward the center of the market. A man was on his knees in the snow. His clothes were torn. His face was bruised. One hand was wrapped around the wrist of a little boy who looked no older than 8. Please, the man begged. Just give me another week. The man standing over him wore a thick black coat and carried a leather whip at his side. A slave trader. Everyone knew him. Rask. He traveled between northern territories buying debtors, prisoners, and children whose families could not pay what the pack demanded. Beside him stood 2 guards. The boy was crying silently. That was what caught Lyra's attention. He wasn't screaming. He wasn't fighting. He was simply crying. Quietly. Like he had already learned that nobody would listen. Rask grabbed the boy's arm. Debt belongs to the family. He's my son, the father whispered. And your debt belongs to the pack. The father lowered his head. Please. Rask pulled the boy toward the wagon. The child stumbled. His fingers tightened around a small piece of torn blue cloth. Lyra noticed it. A piece of his mother's dress, perhaps. Something he had kept because it was the only thing left. The pack watched. Nobody moved. Some wolves looked away. Others pretended not to hear. Lyra stood completely still. Her fingers tightened around the basket. She knew the law. Debt transfer was permitted when a family could not repay certain obligations. She also knew what happened to children who went with traders. They disappeared. Sometimes they came back years later. Sometimes they didn't come back at all. Lyra looked at the little boy. He looked back. Their eyes met. And something inside her broke. She stepped forward. Wait. The market became quiet. Rask turned. His eyes traveled over her worn cloak. Then he laughed. You. Lyra swallowed. Yes. What do you want? Let him go. A few wolves snickered. Rask looked around. Did everyone hear that? More laughter. Lyra's cheeks burned, but she stayed where she was. His a child. His a debt. His both. Rask's smile disappeared. Move. Lyra did not. The boy was standing behind him now, staring at her. Rask reached into his coat. How much? Lyra knew what he meant. She opened her basket. Bread. Roots. A small pouch of dried herbs. Then she reached into the hidden pocket of her cloak. Coins. Every coin she had saved for the coming winter. Rask counted them. Not enough. Lyra looked at the boy. Then at the trader. How much? He named a number that made several people gasp. It was far more than she possessed. Lyra closed her eyes. For one brief moment, she thought of her empty cupboard. The leaking roof. The medicine she needed. The winter ahead. Then she opened her eyes again. I'll work for the rest. Rask laughed. You? Yes. For how long? Until it's paid. He stepped closer. You understand what you're offering? Yes. And you're willing to spend months of your life for a boy who isn't even yours? Lyra looked at the child. No. She stepped between him and the wagon. I'm willing to spend my life so that he doesn't lose his. Silence. Even the wolves who had laughed stopped. Rask stared at her. Then someone behind Lyra whispered, She's crazy. Maybe she was. But Lyra didn't move. She looked down at the boy. Come here. The boy hesitated. Then he slipped behind her cloak. His small hand grabbed the back of it. Lyra felt his fingers trembling. Rask's expression hardened. You're interfering with pack law. Then punish me. The words came quietly, but they carried. For the first time, nobody laughed. Rask stepped forward. And then a deep growl came from the forest. Everyone turned. The sound was low, ancient, powerful enough to make the hairs rise along Lyra's arms. Rask looked toward the trees. Nothing moved. The growl came again. Then silence. Rask glanced at the dark forest. Something in his expression changed. Fear. Only for a second. But Lyra saw it. Rask pointed at her. This isn't finished. He turned and walked away. The wagon followed. The boy remained behind. The market slowly came back to life. Lyra stood in the snow, still holding the child's hand. What is your name? She asked. The boy looked down. Eli. Where is your mother? He squeezed the blue cloth. Gone. And your father? Eli looked toward the empty road. Gone too. Lyra's heart tightened. She looked at the little house beyond the village. It wasn't much. One room. One fireplace. One bed. But there was space. She took Eli's hand. Come with me. He stared at her. Where? Home. It was the first time Lyra had ever said that word about her cottage. She didn't know why. She only knew that the boy needed somewhere to go. They started walking. Neither of them noticed the dark shape standing far beyond the trees. Two golden eyes watched them. And then the creature disappeared into the snow. By the time Lyra reached her cottage, the sky had turned grey. Snow began falling again. Heavy flakes landed on Eli's hair as he followed her inside. The cottage was small, but warm. At least for now. Lyra placed the bread on the table. Sit. Eli Saturday. She poured him water. He held the cup with both hands. Are you hungry? He nodded. Lyra broke the bread in half. Then she gave him the larger piece. He stared at it. You eat too, he whispered. I will. He knew she was lying. But he didn't argue. Lyra turned toward the fire. She added another piece of wood. The flames rose. For the first time that day, Eli's shoulders relaxed. You can sleep here tonight, Lyra said. Will they come? Lyra paused. Yes. Eli looked frightened. But they won't take you tonight. How do you know? Lyra looked at the door. Because they have to get through me first. She didn't know if she could stop them. But Eli didn't need to know that. That evening, she made soup. There wasn't much meat. Mostly roots and herbs. But Eli ate every drop. When he finished, he fell asleep beside the fire. Lyra watched him for a long time. She had spent years thinking her cottage was too empty. Now it felt strangely full. Then she heard something outside. Scratch. 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 Lyra froze. Her hand went toward the small knife beside the table. Again. Scratch. She stood. Eli stirred. Stay here. Lyra opened the door. Cold air rushed inside. At first she saw nothing. Then she looked down. A trail of blood crossed the snow. It led toward the trees. Lyra followed it. She found the wolf 20 steps from her fence. He was enormous. Much larger than any ordinary wolf she had ever seen. His fur was black as midnight. One back leg was twisted beneath him. Blood covered his side. Lyra stopped. The wolf lifted his head. His eyes met hers. Golden. Not yellow. Golden. For one strange second, Lyra forgot to breathe. The wolf growled. Lyra didn't move. I know. The wolf blinked. You're hurt. He tried to stand. He failed. Lyra looked back at the cottage. Then at him. You're going to make this difficult, aren't you? The wolf stared at her. She sighed. Fine. She walked closer. The wolf bared his teeth. Lyra stopped. I won't hurt you. He continued growling. You can bite me if you want. His ears shifted. But if you bite me, I'll be very angry. For some reason, the wolf's growl stopped. Lyra knelt. Come on. She reached toward him. He flinched. Not away from her. As if he expected pain. Lyra's expression softened. Oh. She understood. Someone had hurt him badly. She removed her cloak and placed it over his body. You're coming inside. The wolf stared at her. You can either walk, or I'll drag you. He looked offended. Lyra almost smiled. I'll take that as a yes. It took nearly 10 minutes. By the time she got him inside, her arms were shaking. She cleaned his wounds as carefully as she could. The wolf watched every movement. When she touched his side, his muscles tightened. Easy. His eyes remained fixed on her. You're safe. The words escaped before she thought about them. The wolf became still. Lyra touched the silver chain around his neck. It was old, heavy, and engraved with a symbol. A wolf standing beneath a crown. She frowned. She had seen that symbol before. On royal banners. She looked at the wolf. Then at the chain. Where did you get this? The wolf looked away. Lyra frowned. You understand me, don't you? Nothing. She shook her head. Of course not. She returned to the wound. Outside, a distant howl rose through the night. The wolf suddenly lifted his head. His entire body became tense. Lyra looked toward the window. Another howl. The wolf growled. Not toward the forest. Toward the pack village. Lyra's eyes narrowed. What do you hate about them? The wolf looked at her. For a moment, something passed between them. Recognition. Not knowledge. Something deeper. Something Lyra could not name. Later that night, after Eli was asleep, Lyra sat beside the fire. The wolf rested across the room. She whispered to herself. They said the Alpha King is dead. The wolf's eyes opened. Lyra didn't notice. They said he was killed months ago. The wolf stared at her. But some hunters say they saw a black wolf in the mountains. His ears moved. Lyra glanced at him. You're not him, are you? The wolf looked away. She laughed softly. Ridiculous. She lay down beside the fire. The wolf remained awake. For most of the night, he watched her sleep. And for the first time since he had lost his kingdom, Kael allowed himself to wonder what it would feel like to trust someone again. Morning arrived quietly. Eli woke to the smell of bread. He sat up. Lyra was standing near the table. Morning. Eli rubbed his eyes. Where's the wolf? Lyra looked toward the corner. The black wolf was still there. He hasn't left. Eli stared. Is he yours? Lyra almost laughed. No. The wolf opened one golden eye. Eli smiled. He likes you. Lyra looked at the wolf. I don't think he likes anyone. The wolf closed his eye again. Eli giggled. For a few hours, the cottage felt almost peaceful. Lyra gave Eli a small task, sorting herbs. He took it seriously. The wolf slept near the fire. Lyra began to believe that maybe they had one quiet day. She was wrong. A knock came at the door. 3 hard knocks. Lyra froze. Eli looked at her. Hide. The boy immediately ran behind the bed. Lyra opened the door only a crack. Rask stood outside. 2 men were with him. Where is the boy? Lyra said nothing. He belongs to me. No. Rask smiled. Careful. He isn't property. The law says otherwise. The law is wrong. Rask stepped closer. You've already caused trouble in the village. Don't make me regret letting you walk away yesterday. Lyra's heart beat faster. You let me walk away because you were afraid. Rask's face hardened. I was not afraid. A growl came from inside the cottage. Deep. Low. Rask stopped. His guards looked at each other. Lyra slowly stepped aside. The black wolf walked into view. Rask's face went pale. No. Lyra looked between them. You know him. Rask stepped backward. The wolf stood beside Lyra. His body was still injured. But somehow he looked enormous. Rask reached for his weapon. The wolf growled again. The guards drew their blades. Lyra stepped forward. Don't. One guard looked at her. Move. She didn't. The wolf's shoulder touched her arm. It was a small contact. But Lyra felt strength in it. Protection. Not ownership. Protection. The guard raised his blade. The wolf moved. He didn't attack. He simply lunged forward far enough to knock the weapon from the man's hand. The blade landed in the snow. The man stumbled backward. Rask grabbed his arm. Go. The guards followed. Before leaving, Rask stared at Lyra. You don't know what you've brought into your house. Lyra watched him disappear. Then she turned to the wolf. You understood every word. The wolf looked at her. She folded her arms. You did. Silence. Who are you? Nothing. Why is that man afraid of you? The wolf looked toward the door. Lyra stepped closer. Why do you have a royal chain? He lowered his head. Something in Lyra's chest tightened. You're hiding something. The wolf closed his eyes. Lyra sighed. Fine. She returned to his wound. I'll stop asking. She touched the bandage. The wolf opened his eyes. I mean it. He watched her. You don't have to trust me. Her voice became softer. But I won't hurt you. For several seconds, neither moved. Then the wolf slowly lowered his head. His forehead touched her palm. Lyra froze. Warmth spread through her hand. Not heat. Something deeper. Like a distant heartbeat answering her own. She pulled her hand away. The wolf looked at her. And for the first time, Lyra wondered whether the strange emptiness she had carried inside herself all her life had not been emptiness at all. Perhaps something had simply been waiting. The next morning, Lyra woke to silence. Too much silence. No birds. No wind. No sound from the forest. She stepped outside. Wolves surrounded the cottage. At least 20. Their weapons were drawn. At the front stood 3 members of the council. Lyra's stomach dropped. One of the elders stepped forward. Where is the wolf? Lyra said nothing. Step aside. No. The elder frowned. You are harboring a dangerous creature. He is injured. He is wanted. By whom? The elder's jaw tightened. By the authority of the Frostfang Council. Lyra looked behind them. There were more wolves arriving. She realized something. They weren't hunting an animal. They were terrified of something. She returned inside. The black wolf was standing. His wound had reopened. Lyra whispered, "They're here for you." He looked at her. "I won't let them take you." The wolf stepped closer. Lyra reached toward him. "Please." He looked at her hand. Then at the door. A voice shouted outside. "Bring out the beast." The wolf closed his eyes. His body changed. Lyra stumbled backward. Bones shifted. Fur disappeared. The enormous wolf became a man. He fell to one knee. Lyra stared. Dark hair. Broad shoulders. Old scars crossing his chest and arms. And those same golden eyes. She couldn't speak. The man slowly stood. "My name is Kael." Lyra's lips parted. "The Alpha King." He nodded. The room seemed to disappear around her. "You." Kael looked away. "I didn't want you to know." "You let me feed you." "Yes." "I carried you into my house." "Yes." "I cleaned your wounds." "I know." Lyra stared at him. "You watched me sleep." His expression softened. "Yes." She looked furious. Then confused. Then hurt. "You lied." "I did." "Why?" Kael looked toward the door. "Because everyone outside that door wants me dead." His voice was calm. But there was something beneath it. Pain. He explained what had happened. The ambush. The betrayal. The council members who had turned against him. The soldiers who had hunted him through the mountains. The poison that nearly killed him. The reason he had stayed hidden. "I couldn't trust anyone." Lyra looked at him. "And now?" Kael's eyes met hers. "I don't know." The words were honest. That honesty hurt less than another lie. Lyra looked toward the sleeping Eli. "What about the children?" Kael's expression changed. "They're part of it." "The slave trade." He nodded. "Some council members have been selling omegas and children across the northern territories." Lyra felt sick. The law was changed. By them. Yes. Kael looked at her. They turned law into a weapon. A knock struck the door. Kael's entire body stiffened. Lyra noticed. "Are you afraid?" "No." She raised an eyebrow. "You look afraid." Kael almost smiled. "I'm afraid for you." Lyra didn't know what to say. He stepped closer. There was barely any space between them. "I need to leave." Lyra frowned. "You're injured." "I've survived worse." "You'll die if you keep going." "I might." She grabbed his arm. "Then don't." Kael looked down at her hand. Then back at her face. Something shifted. The warmth returned. Stronger. He gently removed her hand. "You don't know what standing beside me will cost you." Lyra's voice was quiet. "I already stood beside you." Kael stared at her. "You were a wolf. And you still chose to protect me." He had no answer. Outside, the council shouted again. Kael looked toward the door. Then at Lyra. "I know what the bond is." Her breath caught. "What?" "I've felt it since the first night." Lyra stared at him. "Then why didn't you say anything?" "Because a bond doesn't give me the right to decide your life." His voice softened. "If you're my mate, I will not claim you because some ancient magic says I can." Lyra's eyes burned. "Then what will you do?" Kael looked at her. "I'll wait until you choose me." Before she could answer, the door burst open. Kael moved in front of her. And for the first time, Lyra understood exactly what kind of man he was. Not because he was king. Because even wounded, hunted, and betrayed, His first instinct was still to stand between danger and someone weaker. They escaped through an underground passage beneath the cottage. Kael knew the old routes. The passage led deep into the northern forest, toward an abandoned fortress that had once belonged to the royal family. By sunset, they reached it. The fortress was half buried beneath snow. Inside, behind a collapsed stone wall, was a library. Thousands of books lined the walls. Most were covered in dust. Some had been untouched for decades. Eli stared at them. So many. Kael nodded. This place was forgotten. Lyra walked between the shelves. She touched the spine of an old book. Why did they abandon it? Kael's expression darkened. After my father died, the council decided old knowledge was dangerous. Lyra looked at him. Why? Because knowledge gives people choices. She studied him. You hate them. Kael was silent. Yes. The word came quietly. Not with anger. With exhaustion. That night, Kael's wound worsened. Lyra cleaned it beside the fire. He sat shirtless while she changed the bandage. Every scar told a story. Some were thin. Some deep. One crossed his shoulder. Another ran along his ribs. Lyra's fingers paused. Who did this? Kael looked into the fire. My own guards. She continued. Why? They were ordered to kill me. By the council. Yes. She tied the bandage. People you trusted. Kael nodded. People I loved. Lyra looked at him. She didn't say she understood. She knew better than to pretend. Instead, she simply placed another piece of wood on the fire. Kael watched her. You don't ask many questions. You don't answer many. He almost smiled. It was the first real smile she had seen from him. Small. Brief. But real. Later, Lyra fell asleep in a chair. Kael woke sometime after midnight. The fire had almost gone out. Lyra was shivering. He stood quietly. He took off his cloak. He placed it around her shoulders. She stirred. Kael. Sleep. You're still hurt. I know. You should rest. So should you. She opened her eyes. You don't listen. Neither do you. For a moment, they simply looked at each other. Then Lyra smiled faintly. Good night. Good night. He walked away. But he stayed awake for hours. Not because he feared the council. Because he had begun to fear something else. Losing her. The next morning, Lyra found an old book hidden beneath a loose stone. Its pages were written in faded ink. She read aloud. Those born without rank may carry the oldest blood. Kael turned. What? She continued. Among the first guardians of the royal line were Omegas. Kael came closer. The passage described women who could sense Fossard, calm violent wolves, and recognize the true alpha. Lyra stared at the words. I thought Omegas were servants. That is what they taught us. She looked at him. Then why hide this? Kael slowly shook his head. Because if Omegas were once protectors, someone had to benefit from making them believe they were weak. Lyra's fingers trembled. She looked at her hands. My wolf never awakened. Kael stepped closer. Maybe it did. She looked up. What? Maybe you've been using it without knowing. Lyra laughed softly. That sounds impossible. Kael's eyes remained serious. Does it? She remembered the wolf outside her cottage. The way he had calmed when she touched him. The warmth. The strange certainty. She looked at Kael. He looked back. Neither spoke. Neither needed to. Something had already begun changing. And neither of them knew how far it would go. The records gave them names. Dates. Payments. Locations. The council's crimes were no longer rumors. They were written in ink. Kael wanted to move immediately. Lyra stopped him. If you attack them now, they'll destroy everything. Kael turned. They're hurting children. I know. Then why are we waiting? Because we need proof. His jaw tightened. You sound like a council member. Lyra stepped closer. And you sound like a king who wants revenge. Silence. Kael stared at her. She didn't back away. I don't want revenge, he said. You do. His eyes darkened. You don't know what I want. I know what you feel. That stopped him. Lyra softened. You want them to hurt the way you hurt. Kael looked away. After a long moment, he said, maybe. Lyra touched his arm. But if you become like them, they win. Kael closed his eyes. She was right. He hated that she was right. And somehow, he trusted her because she was willing to say it. That night they followed a convoy through the forest. 3 wagons. 24 guards. Children inside. Omegas chained together. Kael's expression became cold. Lyra touched his arm. Wait. He looked at her. There. A small girl was sitting near the back of the wagon. She was injured. Blood covered one side of her dress. Lyra's face changed. She's hurt. Kael grabbed her wrist. Lyra. I have to help her. We don't know how many guards there are. I don't care. I do. She looked at him. Then come with me. Kael stared at her. You're impossible. So I've been told. They moved through the darkness. Quietly. One guard fell. Then another. Kael was faster than any wolf Lyra had ever seen. But he didn't kill. He disarmed. Knocked down. Bound. Lyra reached the wagon. She opened it. The children recoiled. It's okay, she whispered. A little girl stared at her. Are you going to take us? No. Then who are you? Lyra smiled. Someone who came to take you home. One by one, the chains were broken. Eli helped carry water. Kael lifted the injured girl from the wagon. She was barely conscious. Lyra touched her forehead. Stay with me. The girl opened her eyes. You're warm. Lyra smiled through tears. So are you. When everyone was free, Kael walked toward the empty wagon. Iron chains hung from the wooden walls. He tore them down. One by one. Then he carried them to the fire. Lyra watched. Kael threw the chains into the flames. Metal glowed red. The links cracked. The sound echoed through the forest. For a moment, nobody spoke. Kael stared into the fire. All my life, he said quietly, I thought strength meant making people afraid of me. Lyra stood beside him. And now? He looked at her. Now I think strength is making sure no one has to be afraid. The fire reflected in his golden eyes. Lyra reached for his hand. He looked down. Their fingers slowly intertwined. Neither pulled away. The chains burned. And something inside Kael burned with them. Not anger. Not revenge. The last piece of the man who had once believed he had nothing left to lose. They returned to Frostfang 3 days later. This time, Kael did not enter through the shadows. He walked through the main gates. Lyra walked beside him. Eli stayed close. Behind them came the rescued children. The pack gathered. Whispers spread. The king. He's alive. That's the Omega. She brought him back. No, he chose her. The council stood at the center of the courtyard. Elder Garan stepped forward. You have no authority here. Kael stopped. I am the Alpha King. You were declared dead. By people who wanted me dead. Garan looked at Lyra. She manipulated you. Lyra's expression remained calm. The same wolf who had once lowered her eyes now stood beneath hundreds of watching faces. Garan pointed toward her. She is an Omega. Lyra looked at him. Yes. You have no rank. No. You have no family. No. You have no right to stand beside the king. Lyra looked around. The children stood behind her. Eli held her hand. She took a breath. I never asked for the right. Garan frowned. I only asked you to stop hurting people. The courtyard went silent. Kael stepped forward. Bring the ledgers. 2 wolves carried boxes into the courtyard. Names. Payments. Routes. Orders. Everything. The council's crimes were exposed one piece at a time. The slave traders. The children. The stolen land. The false laws. The attempt on Kael's life. Garan tried to deny everything. Then Eli stepped forward. His small voice shook. He took my father. Everyone looked at him. Eli held the blue cloth in his hand. He said I belonged to him. The courtyard became painfully quiet. Kael looked at Lyra. She nodded. Kael turned to the pack. No child in Frostfang will ever be sold again. The crowd remained silent. Then one wolf stepped forward. An older warrior. He lowered his head. I served the council. He looked at Lyra. I was wrong. He knelt. One knee. In the snow. Lyra stared. Another wolf followed. Then another. The wolves who had mocked her. The wolves who had ignored her. The wolves who had once walked past her cottage as if she did not exist. They began kneeling. One after another. Soon the entire courtyard was filled with lowered heads. Lyra could barely breathe. She looked at Kael. What is happening? He smiled faintly. They're seeing you. She shook her head. I don't want this. I know. I didn't do it for this. I know. Then the crowd began moving. Not toward the palace. Toward her cottage. By sunset, wolves filled the snowy path outside her home. One knelt. Then 5. Then 20. Then dozens. Every wolf lowered their head. Even those who had laughed. Even those who had called her useless. Even those who had looked away when Eli was taken. Lyra stood in her doorway. Her hands trembled. She whispered, "Why?" Kael stood behind her. "Because you protected people when nobody was watching." Lyra looked at him. "They're only kneeling because you're king." Kael shook his head. "No." He stepped beside her. "They're kneeling because you reminded them what a pack is supposed to be." Lyra looked at the wolves. For years, she had imagined what it would feel like to be accepted. She had thought it would feel powerful. Instead, it felt painful. Because she remembered being alone. She remembered the laughter. The cold. The empty table. And the little boy holding her cloak. Eli stepped beside her. "Are they our family now?" Lyra looked down at him. She smiled. "Maybe." He took her hand. Kael watched them. For the first time, he understood something. A crown had never made him a king. Lyra had. Not because she demanded obedience. Because people chose to follow the example she gave them. Night settled over Frostfang. The wolves eventually left. The courtyard became quiet again. Snow covered their footprints. Lyra stood outside her cottage. She looked toward the mountains. Kael stood behind her. For several minutes, neither spoke. Then Lyra said, "You should go back to the palace." Kael frowned. "I know. You're king. I know. You have responsibilities. I know." She looked at him. "You keep saying that. Because you keep trying to send me away." Lyra smiled. "Only slightly. I don't know what happens now." Kael stepped closer. "Neither do I." She turned toward him. "You've been a king your whole life." "Not anymore." "Why?" "Because I don't want to live the way I did before." Lyra waited. Kael looked toward the cottage. "At first, I thought you were simply kind." Lyra smiled. "I am." He nodded. "You are." Then his expression became serious. "But you were more than kind." She looked at him. "You stood between a slave trader and a child when everyone else looked away." He stepped closer. "You brought an injured wolf into your home even though you were afraid." Another step. "You trusted me when I had given you every reason not to." His voice became quieter. "And somehow, without trying, you reminded me who I was before they took everything from me." Lyra's eyes filled with tears. Kael reached for her hand. She let him. "I felt the bond the first night," he said. "I know. I wanted to tell you." "Why didn't you?" Because I was afraid. Lyra looked surprised. Of me? No. He shook his head. Of what loving you would mean. She squeezed his hand. You thought it would make me weak. I thought it would make you a target. And now? Kael looked at her. Now I know that loving you doesn't make me weak. His thumb moved gently over her fingers. It makes me want to become better. Lyra looked away. I don't know if I'm ready to be a queen. Kael smiled. I didn't ask you to be one. She looked back at him. What did you ask? He took a breath. Nothing. She blinked. Nothing. I want you to choose. Her eyes softened. Choose what? Me. The word hung between them. No command. No crown. No ancient law. Just a choice. Lyra looked at him for a long time. Then she whispered, I already did. Kael's eyes closed. The bond awakened. There was no thunder. No explosion of magic. Only warmth. The same warmth Lyra had felt when the black wolf first rested his forehead against her hand. It spread through her chest. Into her hands. Into every place where loneliness had once lived. Kael touched his forehead to hers. Lyra closed her eyes. She could feel his heartbeat. Steady. Strong. Afraid. Human. Not the Alpha King. Not the beast from the forest. Just Kael. The man she had chosen before she ever knew his name. I loved the wolf first, she whispered. A small smile touched his lips. I know. I didn't know he was you. I know. I might have been less frightened if you had told me. I know. She laughed softly. You say that a lot. I've had a difficult few months. She laughed again. And Kael smiled. For the first time, without pain behind it. Behind them, the cottage door stood open. Eli was sleeping beside the fire. The rescued children had found homes throughout the pack. The chains were gone. The council had fallen. And Frostfang was beginning to change. Lyra looked down the snowy path. Once, wolves had walked past her door without seeing her. Now every wolf in the territory knew her name. But she did not want their kneeling. She wanted something simpler. A home. A family. Someone who would stay. Kael took her hand. I can give you a palace. She looked at him. I don't want one. I know. I want this. He looked at the cottage. The old roof. The tiny windows. The crooked fence. The place where an unwanted Omega had once lived alone. Kael smiled. Then this is where the king will live. Lyra raised an eyebrow. You're going to live here. If you'll have me. She pretended to think. I suppose I can tolerate you. Kael laughed quietly. Then he pulled her gently into his arms. No command. No claim. Just warmth. Lyra rested her head against his chest. Outside, snow began falling again. Softly. Silently. The same snow that had once made her feel alone now covered the village like a clean white blanket. And somewhere beyond the cottage, a wolf howled. Another answered. Then another. Soon the whole valley seemed to breathe together. Lyra closed her eyes. For years, she had believed her life began and ended at the edge of that little cottage. She had believed she was the Omega nobody wanted. The wolf nobody waited for. The woman nobody would ever choose. She had been wrong. Because sometimes the person everyone overlooks is the one who carries the thing a broken world needs most. Kindness. Courage. And the strength to stand between the powerful and the helpless. The pack had laughed when Lyra walked through their village alone. They had mocked her because she had no rank. They had looked away when a child was dragged toward a slave trader's wagon. But Lyra had not looked away. And that single choice had changed everything. The Alpha King had returned. The council had fallen. The chains had burned. The children had been saved. And the lonely Omega had finally found the family she never thought she would have. Not because she became powerful, but because she had always been stronger than they knew. Kael whispered against her hair. Are you happy? Lyra looked toward the open doorway. Eli slept beside the fire. The wolves of Frostfang were finally safe. and the man she loved was holding her hand. She smiled. For the first time. Kael kissed her forehead. Then they stood together beneath the falling snow. No longer king and omega. No longer beast and healer. No longer hunted and alone. Just two wounded souls who had found each other at the moment they had both stopped believing they would ever be found. And behind them, in the quiet valley of Frostfang, every wolf lowered its head. Not because Lyra demanded it. Not because the king commanded it. But because, at last, they understood. The lonely omega they had mocked had never been beneath them. She had simply been waiting for the world to become worthy of her. And when it finally did, she opened her door and let it in.